Good morning and welcome everyone. I'm your host Abhinav Agarwal and I am delighted today to have in this latest edition of Indic Chat Ms. Kavita Kane, who, as you all know, is the best-selling author of 4 books on Indian mythology and where the central character is based is a woman in all of the 4 novels. In her own words, the characters in her novels are women of conviction, and she her 4 books have been published since 2012, starting with Karn's Wife in 2012 or early 2013. That was followed by Sita's Sister in 2014, Menka's Choice in 2015, and Lanka's Princess last year in 2016. All of them have been published by Rupa Publishers, and as I said again, she believes that the women in her novels are women of conviction. So, with that quick introduction, welcome once again, Ms. Kavita, and we are delighted to have you here. Let us begin with a short introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You had a long, successful career in journalism, and can you tell us a little bit about that? Where did you grow up? What led you to writing in the first place, and what led you to write on this very specialized area in writing on women from Indian mythology? Can you share with our viewers a little bit about all of these things?
Okay. Uh, Good morning. A very good Sunday morning. Uh, I think it's quite a long question, but anyways, I was born in Mumbai. My childhood was in Delhi and Patna, and then I think my mother actually decided to come to Pune because Pune was always known as a city of education, and I think after moving around too much, I think she decided to settle on one place, and it was Pune, which was a completely random decision because we didn't have anyone in Pune that time. Anyway, my later schooling, my college, Saxon College, then the university, Pune University. I did my post graduation in English literature and later mass communication, and I think that's how actually my two professions started. As such, the literature was, of course, is helping greatly now, and I think the mass com. I started my career as a journalist for the past 20 years. I think I retired. My last job was assistant editor at Times of India, and at there's a tabloid called Pune Mirror. I was there, and then I think the book actually started because I think it is usually a journalist always wants to write a book, and usually journalists end up writing non-fiction, and I just did not want to write non-fiction because I think I had enough of data and figures in my journalistic career. So I said, okay, let me try a hand at creative writing, and which I'd never done. I didn't even have a article published in a college magazine. So, and that's how I think Karna's Wife came about, and it did well. And I think it gave me enough courage to write the second book, which was Sita's Sister. And I think there was, as the cliche goes, there was no turning back. I think while doing Sita's Sister, I decided to sort of give up my media job and become a full-time author.
Fascinating. So, what led you to write, Karna's Wife to begin with, and was it success that led you to write Sita's Sister again, woman themed, or was it something of more of a conscious choice that you made, and it's just that the success of Karn's Wife basically help you reinforce that conviction that you had?
Yes, of course, because actually it's very interesting. I wanted to write on Urmila first. She was my Sita's Sister should have been my first book, but when I did my research and I realized there's absolutely nothing about her besides 3 lines, and I think that just did not give me the courage to write a full-fledged 300-page novel on her. So I started off with Karna's Wife, and as I said, it was a sort of a sleeper hit. And the publishers came back to me, and I had this idea ready, and I think it's seriously the success of Karna's Wife gave me that courage to deal with Urmila as a extremely minor character and to make her a female protagonist of a 300-page novel knowing absolutely nothing about her. And then that whole system of I think that's how I think that's how my later also books followed a certain pattern where the minor characters I started deriving a lot of I started fleshing them out through the big characters and the events which sort of the events and the situation which they came across. So where Sita's sister was concerned, yes, Urmila is completely.
That will come for you to play a role, but that's not the role you imagined with this morning. Yeah.
There's some.
Okay, we'll leave it at that now. I don't think you require to sit in.
Okay, I think I've muted all the lines again, so I think we can continue. Yes, there was. Yes, you were saying.
Yes, about Urmila. So Urmila was sort of essentially fleshed out through the character of Ram, Sita, Lakshman, and I think even Janak. So that's how the second book came about, and I think the journey started. Well-established journey.
So between Urmila and Karn's wife, I don't think, at least if you look at the primary sources, there is not a whole lot of information available on either of these two characters. Both of them, I think, as you said, for Urmila, there are all of 3 lines. I think there are probably less than 3 lines on Karn's wife, at least
Yes.
primary Mahabharata. So, and you said you wanted to write about Urmila first, but how did you then end up writing about Karn's wife, given that there's an, equally less amount of information?
Yeah, because I think there were 2 characters. Karna's wife, when I think it was like, okay, I started off badly. I had to sort of keep Urmila away. And my next favorite character was Karna. And I did not want to write about Karna through his own eyes, in the sense I didn't want to write a male story because it has been written. And I was always curious whether he had a wife, especially when you see the Vastraharen episode. And I remember I used to ask my grandmother this question. How did he face his wife after this Vastraharen episode? So she had given a very nonchalant answer, and she said, "Okay, I mean, he had several wives, so I think the typical answer. Okay, I think the wife understood." So I think that was a part of it sort of remained in me, and then I did some research on Karna's wife. Vrushali was there. Initially, I was sort of contemplating on making her the protagonist. Then I had to create a Urvi because I realized Vrushali was sort of a huge character in Marathi literature, thanks to Shivaji Sawant and Mrityunjay. And I did not want to sort of distort that image at all. And I said, okay, there were otherwise. So let me, I think it's Tamil folklore where there's a character called Ponurvi. And I sort of extracted some information from her. And I created Urvi. I think that was a huge creative license I took. Because I wanted Karna's wife as a woman who could be of his social stature, or not of his social stature actually, a person who could sort of mingle in the royal courts, sort of be confident enough to stand in front of a Kunti or a Bhishma or a Duryodhan or even an Arjun, So something who had some sort of a political background. And I think that's how Urvi's character came about. And then, of course, the second most important issue was, okay, should I contemporize it? Because Mahabharata is the most common, it's most popularly sort of translated into modern times. And then I said, no, I think that whole charm of the whole moral dilemmas of that world, you cannot really relate it to now. So I think I kept it as that. And then I wrote Urvi as essentially a conscience of Karna, where we see a Karna in such a, like this, he's a tragic classic hero with his flaws, but we never talk about his flaws as such. And I think as a wife, she saw that flaw, how she accepted them, and how she becomes sort of a sutradhar of his life. So she is telling Karna's story. Karna's wife is about Karna. It's not about her at all. But how her role in it, and how she sees her husband, his fall, his rise, his eventual death, and it is, I think, a more sensitive portrayal of him, more not just as Duryodhan's friend or Arjun's rival, more as a family man, as a brother, as a son, as a husband. And I think I was more interested in that, more interested in relationships as such. So, and then, as I said, Urvi became highly popular, and then I said, okay, let me write about Urmila now. And then I think it became sort of an unconscious pattern where I realized I started writing more about women than men. Though I think men are equally important in the sense they are. I mean, Karna's wife cannot be without Karna, or I don't think Sita's sister can be what it is without Lakshman. So I think men, yes, are certainly a little backseat, but yes, they are there.
Yes, I completely agree on the part that women cannot be complete without men, and vice versa. But so you kind of answered part of my next question, which was that how do you draw the line between portraying these women as strong characters? And you said that you did not consciously want to contemporize those characters. You wanted to have them be rooted in the era that that they lived in. And even for Karna's wife, did talk to a little bit about how you looked at the Marathi and Tamil literature and theater. For some of your other books, like Menka's Choice and Lanka's Princess Shupnakha, how does a typical research process go about? How much time did you take for those two? Where did you where did you have to go to for your for doing your research?
Oh, I don't have to go anywhere. I think fortunately everything is there on the net nowadays. But honestly, as I said, the characters being small, there wasn't much information about them per se. It was, I had to, whether all the four characters, whether it's Menka, Surpanaka, Urvi of course was fictional, but or Urmila, I sort of derived them from the events, basically the events which influence their life and the people around them. So research takes a lot of my time. In fact, it's more of reading than writing. I mean, writing, yes, I have a certain schedule, I finish it, but research is on. It's a constant thing. Even when I'm writing, I'm sort of checking, rechecking, because they're very interesting folklores, and I'm somehow I think the folklore sort of humanized mythology. I think that is why they also live. Mythology is still living in our society today. It's part of our culture because of, you see it everywhere. I mean, through folklore and folk theater and folk music, they made the gods, they made universal issues, our daily issues. They become. So I think that is how I try to. I think this whole thing about example, this romance between subtle romance, or at least suspected romance between Karna Draupadi, is a part of Marathi folklore. So it's not something I imagined it. I think Shashi Kapoor did a wonderful job about it in Kaliyug. So there is a certain sexual tension between Karna and Draupadi, which is a part of Marathi folklore. Now, these sort of things. So while doing research, I'm more interested in these small threads. Even with Surpanaka, I think this whole Kamban thing of making her into Minakshi. So Surpanaka is not Valmiki Surpanaka at all. It is more of, where she's a beautiful girl, where she's the beautiful sister of a powerful king. And her journey to life, and being a brother of such powerful brothers. Now, there was nothing about Surpanaka beside that small episode where she meets Ram and Lakshman and she gets her nose chopped off. And then she goes to Ravan and complains. Besides that, there's nothing at all about her. Now, I had to create an entire novel based before and after. I had to do it because otherwise she doesn't it doesn't come full circle at all. So, being the sister of such three powerful brothers, three very, very intelligent, all of them were scholars in their own right, and being their sister, how was it? Or with Menka, you see Menka only as this seductress who seduces Vishwamitra, has a child from him and disappears. What was her life? I mean, so I think Menka was actually the most difficult character to flesh out because Vishwamitra compared to her was very huge, and there was nothing about Menka at all. Besides she being, and then I tried to delve into the entire thinking of what an Apsara is. Like if she is a sort of a symbol of female sexual power, what lies behind that power? Is she really as sexually free as she's supposed to be? So I think that whole I went on a very different, very unlike Urvi or Urmila. I think where from Menka onwards, I think the whole concept started about. I was more interested in the greys than the whites. Yes.
So to that end, then if you look at your characters, you have said that they are women of a strong character. And when you etched them out from your imagination and your creativity, they do come out as fully fleshed out characters. Did you at any point to feel that perhaps in our epics, these apart from Draupadi, who's one of the characters, or maybe even Devyani, who are fleshed out as fairly strong-willed, independent-minded people, did you feel the need that maybe some of these other characters that we know less about needed to be given a more stronger portrayal?
Personally, I think it's just not Draupadi, but I think all the women in mythology are strong characters, considering the situation they come across or the limitation they are living in. We always think of Draupadi, but I think in Mahabharata, I think Satyavati is equally powerful. As you said, Devyani is. Sarmishta in her own way does it. Gandhari does it. Kunti. You see each of them, or a Hidimba. All of them, we have not exactly. When I see, I'm more interested in the minor characters because the moment the spotlight is on them, it's not that the plot changes, the narrative which changes a little, where you see life through their eyes, and then how from moving from a minor character to the protagonist, it sort of brings about an entire different perspective altogether. So coming back to your question about fleshing them out again, I think it would be all these characters, strong women characters. I think Draupadi I will definitely not handle now because I think she's very much part of our colorful imagination. And so I think I try women, all the women characters. You see someone as small as Shabri. What is her role? When you see, that is I think the charming part about her mythology. Any character, however small she is, she has a role. She is part of progressing the plot. I think that's what intrigued Surpanaka to me was without her, the second part of Ramayana doesn't happen. If she had not met Ram and Lakshman, Ram, I think, and Ravan would have never met, or the war would not have been had. So if Draupadi is the one who started the war in the Mahabharata, I think can say Surpanaka is the one who started it in the Ramayana. So, they have been sort of, not only they are minor, they have been slotted into stereotypes. So Surpanaka becomes this wild woman. She is this wicked sister of a wicked brother. And I think this wickedness I wanted to sort of unravel. And there I think came out her strength. Or, I'm talking about any other character. You pick up any actor. I'll ask you. You pick out any character and you actually see them. You inspect them closely and you realize, yes, they are worth a story. They are worth a book. So I think each character is worth a book. So I would not say Vyas made Draupadi his heroine, but so exactly. So the thing is, the fact that there are so many women. I think our mythology, we are very fortunate in the sense we have equal number of women to the men. It's not a male. Number wise, numerically, it is not that the males dominate the women. No, not at all. You see so many small women characters, and each has a role. They are part of the narrative, however small. So I think
I agree. I completely agree about the fact that women are not lacking in our mythology and epics. So I do okay. What I want to do here is, as you know,
but I'd like to add a point here, if I may. When I say women are strong, yes, but I think somehow down the ages, I think mythology itself became a victim of patriarchy. So if you see the character, especially Sita, where I think the three immediate characters I can think of is Sita, Ahilya, and Shakuntala. Their characters, or even a Gandhari, the way it's been portrayed now is very, very different from what Vyasa or Valmiki had actually decided on his character, on these people. Because, example, let's talk about Gandhari. That blindfold means so many things. It's actually about a woman who sort of internalizes her anger towards herself. But there is anger. We immediately the patriarchy immediately tagged that blindfold as a sign of self-denial, sacrifice and a certain passivity, which Gandhari was not. There was a huge anger in her, and she never let it out. And she simmered and simmered all through these years. And I think the blindfold is a symbol of that. So, or an Ahilya. You see Ahilya immediately sort of, from that ideal woman, she suddenly becomes a promiscuous woman. She becomes the fallen woman. Her story is exactly of that. And I think the original story was not, she it's not that she was strict or something. She made a conscious effort. She knew it was Indra she was. So I think it was a question of a woman's choice. And if she was ready to pay the consequences for it, I think she was ready to pay for it. She was not worried about that. But she had a choice. That is very important. That she had the choice, she had the freedom to choose. And that makes, I think, the women stronger in mythology. And the original ones. Or even if you see Shakuntala. Vyasa's Shakuntala she's not a damsel in distress at all. She never begs. She never goes back to Dushyant. She never begs for even the presence in his court. It's only when her 12-year-old son asks her, "Who is my father?" And I think she decides he is entitled to an answer, and that is the time she takes him to Dushyant and introduces him. So Vyasa Shakuntala is so very different from the popular imagination we have of Shakuntala today. So that really shows that how patriarchy did blunt the women characters, especially. Yes.
Absolutely. So, if you look at how Shakuntala is portrayed in the Mahabharata to how in Kalidas's poem Shakuntala is portrayed, there's a big change in how Valmiki's Sita is when Ram talks about going into exile, to how Tulsidas portrays Sita, and even Gandhari. It's basically the pent up anger and resentment that really results in that curse that destroys the entire Yadav race. So absolutely. I'm going to change tacks a little bit here. And as you know, my two daughters got interested in reading your books, and they have read 3 of your 4 books. They have not read Menka's Choice, and they have also...
I don't know, how old are they?
So the younger one is 10 and the elder one is 12 and a half. And
Menka's Choice is not for them. I'll give them another 2-3 years at least. So, because I think that is one book. Seriously, that is one book where I sort of digress from my usual, especially after Sita's sister, where it was about basically about a woman's sexuality. And I think I'm not too sure a 10-year-old or a 10-year-old girl will be able to handle it. So I don't know. She might just get a little confused. So let's see. Keep it at that.
So they, as you know, they also wrote reviews on a couple of your books, and they're right here. And they had a few questions. And one of the questions you have already answered. They had a question on where they say that in some books Karn has 2 wives, but Urvi is not mentioned, and you answered that by saying that Urvi was more or less...
But even this 2-wife thing, it's very interesting. People think Supriya was the second wife. Now, Supriya herself was a fictional character created by Shivaji Savant in Mrityunjay. So down the line, I think they become... See, that's how my mythology sort of evolves. Each stories are collected down the years, for thousands of years, and that's how it gets accumulated. So technically, he was married. You don't know how many wives, because even Vrishali is sort of very, very cursorily mentioned by, she's not even mentioned by name by Gandhari. So yes, there were later stories which all these were added. So yes, I will definitely like to meet your daughters.
So the next question was on Sita's sister and Lanka's princess, and I'll have the elder one ask you that question. So, Anvi, do you want to come here? I'm going to turn this around, and you can then ask this question. Yes, can you see her?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Anvita.
So in your book, Sita's Sister, you do not mention a lot about Urmila's childhood like you do about Shurpanakha's in Lanka's Princess.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about how Shurpanakha's childhood affected her adulthood. Was it the same in the case of Urmila?
No, not really, because Urmila's growth as a character is during those 14 years. Unlike Surpanaka, if you could tag her as an evil woman, I actually wanted to show that evil is not born, evil is it evolves. With Urmila, it wasn't so. Urmila basically has interest in the sisterly relationship, the natural born daughter and the adopted daughter. And I think she had the very essence of Urmila, if you see, just a 3-line mention, but with the grace which she accepts Lakshman's decision, showed that Valmiki wanted Urmila to be an extremely mature woman. And taking that line, I think she's essentially built as a daughter of Janak. So Janak again was a very exceptional man. He was a king, but he was also a rishi. So he was a Raj Rishi. So where they used to have annual philosophical conferences. So being the daughter of such a man had added a certain. She and Sita were brought up in a atmosphere which was so very different from the other palaces in the other kingdom. So the childhood of her was not very important because I sort of wanted to bring a contrast between Mithila and Ayodhya. That was where the freedom which or the expression of thought which was there in Mithila, which Sita and Urmila had, as compared to Ayodhya. And I think Urmila, if you see, her story is not a story of love at all with Lakshman. It is a story of separation. And what did that separation do? Those 14 years of loneliness, how does she use it? And I think that actually defined her character. Unlike Surpanaka's, where her childhood for me was important because, as I said, she was the sister of not just 3 powerful brothers, she was the daughter of a rishi again. And her mother was Kekesi, who was Danav. So being a daughter, how did the 3 brothers grew up in a very different way? How did the daughter grow up? So I think the childhood was very important because there was a thread about Surpanaka where I read that she actually used Ram and Lakshman to take her revenge on Ravan. Now, I did not want it to be a dramatic moment where she suddenly starts hating Ravan. So if she has a certain grouse or a certain resentment against her brother, I have to give her childhood. So I think there the childhood became important because unlike that of Urmila, because for her, the relationship between Lakshman and Urmila has no connection whatsoever with her childhood. So I hope I answered your question.
I think it has. Right?
Yeah,
the
it
next
really has.
question is from the younger one, and I think you'll. Yes, Anika, why don't you come here? And let's. Yes, you want to ask your question?
Hey.
Two books, Sita's Sister and Lanka's Princess, include a lot of romance.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, when you were writing these books, did you direct them towards the elderly group or the younger generation?
Both actually, because the romance of let's say Sita's Sister is very different from the romance of Lanka's Princess. Thank God you have not read Menka's Choice. So the thing is, Sita's Sister, the romance is actually a fairy tale romance, because as I said earlier, the story of Lakshman and Urmila is not a story. It's not a love story. It's a story of loneliness and separation. Now, for that story to develop, I need some sort of a grounding where I need some sort of a romance there. So the romance had to be mentioned, some sort of a romance between Lakshman and Urmila. Unlike that of Surpanaka, where she is an extremely bold and assertive woman. And there I think her entire story of Surpanaka is the story of sexual aggression. And I don't know how a young girl like you could tackle that topic, but I read the review and I was really liked it. But though I know that this was the part you were unhappy about, but then it was a part of her character. It's a part of her personality. So this now, as you say, now talking about young and old, I think I'll let you on to a secret. Sita Sister was the first half of Sita Sister was very, very popular with the younger generation. The second half of Sita Sister was liked more by the older generation. Menka's choice was loved by the younger generation, and I think Lanka's Princess, I think it was sort of. I think by that time people had accepted, yes, these are sexuality is a part, is a topic, and a character trait of a woman also. So I think the definition and the character of romance sort of changes in every book. Yes.
Thank you.
That was, by the way, that was a very discerning question. Very, very. I mean, I'm very impressed with that.
Well, yes, that was a question that preyed on their minds when deciding to write the review also. And I think Anika, at least I think for Lanka's Princess, did bring that part out in her review. So the last set of two questions are on the both of them have, which is that do you want to go ahead and ask that question, Anvi?
I'll do that. With relevance to our earlier question, have you considered writing a book directed towards the younger kids?
Yeah, that's going to be difficult. I think considering that you have asked me this question now, I think I will think over twice before I write a book on young adults, because I realize I don't know. If I do, I'll definitely. I think you people will be the first ones to know. But the fact that you girls have read it, and I have readers right till age 90 plus, that shows that there is a wide spectrum. And yes, but for young adults, I think I need to get sex out of it. So definitely, I mean, when I'm writing books for children, I would definitely not have sex and violence as topics. I can do it in a more subtle way, more discreet way, where the entire writing technique also changes.
Okay, thank you. The last question. That's okay. So now coming back to the main, I have so what I wanted to ask is that what is the best praise you have received for your books, and conversely, criticism that hurt or helped the most?
Oh, I think the best praise I got was when Karna's wife got compared to Mrutyunjay, and I think that was it was one of my most humbling moments, and I think yes, that is one praise. And of course, I think actually when I had this gentleman, he's 92, 94, and he wrote a handwritten letter. I think he had read Sita's Sister, and he wrote a handwritten letter, and he sent it through his grandson who was passing through India. He stays in Delhi, this gentleman, and his grandson stays in Canada, and he had some work in Pune. So he passed this letter, and that grandson came to me and gave the letter to me. And that I think was another very, very, these are the cherishing moments where you realize that it really moves you. Criticism, yes, it definitely helps, because many times unconsciously you are making mistakes and you don't realize it. So yes, I'm never arrogant about the criticism. I take each of them seriously, because that is the way you sort of improve yourself. And if you are going to say, oh, I don't have any scope of improvement, I think that is, you're not only being arrogant, you're being smug. You're reached a very sedentary level. If you have to grow as an author, you are of course flawed as a writer also. You can't have that thing that, okay, I have. So I love it when my flaws are sort of singled out. And many times I do not, I mean, it happens so often on Twitter that send me quotes, and then I realize, God, did I write that line? So, there are moments of, okay, embarrassment, I sort of, the cringe moment, and there are moments where I thought, okay, did I write this line? So, I think I sort of exist because of the reader's reaction. So, it's an extremely positive relationship, whether it's criticism or praise.
So let's go back let's go back in time. And you said you have, educational qualifications. You did English literature and you did mass communication, and then you spent, more than 20 years in journalism at the Times of India and so on. Both in terms of the craft of writing as well as the influences that it had on how you approach a story. Because obviously, you've said, and it's clear that you've been influenced quite a lot by folk lore and by drama that exists today. But can you talk a little bit about how your stint in journalism and your education in mass communication and literature helped?
Oh, hugely, because I realize as a writer, the technical part of it, I think journalism helped me enormously. It starts from editing. Because I remember my first book, Karna's Wife, was 1,30,000, and the person said, the editor said, okay, you need to, we want it in a lakh words,
So just for the sake of our readers, roughly, can you tell us in terms of how much is 1,30,000 words in terms of?
It definitely must be more than 300 pages, because I think that's what they wanted. They wanted me to sort of restrict the story in 300 pages. Okay. So it was definitely more than 300 pages. And so they wanted me to cut down to 30,000 words. And I gave it to them in a week's time. And they were sort of floored. And I said, that time I realized, yes, I'm not in love with my own words. I can cut them when I want them. I can remove them, which are not necessary. I can do it with a clinical cut. So there's no unnecessary emotions involved with my language, in the sense I'm not in love with my own language where I feel bad, oh, I should not cut this. Of course, if there is information, yes, I sort of condense it and put it. But otherwise, I think that entire craft of editing journalism helped me a lot. Secondly, even while doing research, because in the end of, by the end of it, you have so much of information, and then sort of sieving it and then condensing it in a book. That itself is a time-consuming process. Now, this sort of things is a very natural thing when you are a journalist, because whenever you're interviewing a person, okay, you're transcribing it. He is going to talk for about 1 hour or 2 hours, whatever. Transcribing and condensing it into a 500-word copy or a 800-word copy or even a 1,000-word copy, depends on the 1,500-word copy. That sort of discretion which you have, I think it's a technicality. So I think that again journalism gave me, and the discipline of writing, let's say 5 hours every day. That, and the fourth, I think, is the way I approach a character. All my characters, it's not just my protagonist. I think all of my characters, I try to place myself in their shoes. I try to think the way they would have thought, and I think that happens with my. I mean, I don't know, it's a sort of a utopian idea that journalists are supposed to be fair and sensible. So I try to rope in that trait where I try to treat my characters with the respect they deserve. I try, if she's negative, yes, she's negative. I'm not interested in the black and white. I'm interested in the gray. And for the grays, what is the rationale behind the gray? So I think their journalism helped me, because being fair, I think it's very, very necessary for an author, because the author has to be fair to all the characters, however small or large they are. So even if I think that's what I would try to say, that, and I mean, the mythology, both Vyas and Valmiki, they were fair to all their characters, however small they. It is not the length of the character which is important, the depth of the character which is important. So I think that thought about journalism in India, okay. Yes, being fair is a very strong, because when you write a story, I was a featured writer, but there is a certain bias, but sieving your bias, you have to go beyond your bias and see the person I see. I think that demands a certain maturity from the writer, whether it's a journalist writer or whether it's an author. So it gives us, there has to be that.
Okay. 4 of your books have been on women characters, and there is lot in Indian mythology still to be, that has not been tapped. If you look at, you talked about Karn's wife, there is also Jayadrat's wife, who was actually a Kaurav's sister, that's not been written about much. There is Amba, there's Devyani, there's Sharmishta, there's so can
There are lots. What there is a Duryodhan's daughter. I mean, she's a very interesting character.
yes.
So, oh yeah, lots. I mean, as I told you, each one deserves a book if you actually go through what they have gone. Because I think Mahabharata, the Kurukshetra itself was such a, and it was actually the denouement of the entire story. You see, Mahabharata, there are 3 parts: the Shantanu part, Satyavati part, like Bhishma, Devrat part. The second is the Pandu, Dhritarashtra part, and the third is the Kaurava and the Pandavas, which is more popular, more known. So Kurukshetra is the denouement of the entire journey. Now, in that journey, there are thousands of women, and I think yes, I have a lot of scope.
So, can you share what your next book is going to be about? Any character you have identified, you're already working on?
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done with the manuscript. The book is ready. In the sense, the manuscript is ready. And okay, I will not. She's not from the Ramayana this time. She is from the Mahabharata. So she can be any of all these characters which you mentioned.
Okay,
So,
fascinating. So we will look forward to when you can share more details about it.
give it a month. It will be out in December. So I think next month I will start talking about it. That's it.
All of us at Indic Club and even otherwise, I think are going to look forward to that announcement next month. So before I turn it over to our viewers, and there are a couple of questions that have come in through the chat, I wanted to ask you, how's been the publishing experience? How difficult was it to get a publisher to and that a mainstream publisher to publish these books? Did your stint in journalism help you figure out how best to navigate the world of publishing, or can you talk about that part?
No, actually, no. Journalism did not help me at all. In fact, I just did. I started working it the other way around. I went to bookshops and asked them who are the best publishers.
Really?
Yeah, because I wanted to know, because I was not really interested in having the name. I wanted the book to be available, to be seen, the visibility. How many times do you see a book at a bookshop, the book which you want, So I remember going to, and I was not talking about crossword, I'm talking about small bookshop. And I wanted to know the distributorship of each publisher. So anyways, by that time, I think this was a later thing. I had finished, like now, I had finished the manuscript. Randomly, I sent the first 3 chapters to all the leading publishers of the country. Most of them responded yes or no, whatever. So I've never had a publisher giving a snub and not replying at all. But whether it was a negative or a positive, they did answer. Eventually, it sort of boiled down to 4 publishers. And I think Rupa gave me the best deal. And I went ahead with it. And actually, I never thought I'd write after Karnadwaya, I wouldn't write another book. I think I always thought I'd write one book and that's about it. And as I said, it did well and it gave me confidence. And the publishers came back. They wanted another book. So that's how the journey started. And then the 3rd, and then the 4th. That's how it happened. So, and then I sort of disciplined myself that okay, I'll write one book every year. Because by Sita, when I started Sita Sister, I had given up my job, so it was I was a full-time writer. So I had a lot of time in my hands, and it was I could write at a more leisurely pace. And the publishers, yes, I have no question of going because the 4 books are there. But the next one is with Westland.
Okay, so Westland. Okay, fantastic. So first of all, thank you again, Ms. Kavita, for answering in detail all of these questions. I'll read out this question that is coming from the group chat, and then I'm going to unmute everyone's line so people can ask questions. This one has come from reader named Otter, and I'm going to read that question out, and if he can ask, rephrase it if needed. So the question is, do you think a lot of fiction might need reinterpreting the Indian mythos? Is there a higher purpose to sharing the Indian instruments and characters? So I'm going to unmute everyone, or let's see if I can unmute Otter. So Otter, you are unmuted, and if you want to clarify your question, please go ahead.
Yeah, Abhinav, this is Sangram here. I don't know why it came up as Otter. So I really wanted to know, there are some authors who are writing about the Indian mythological characters, and they have got into trouble in certain quarters. So there seems to be a societal boundary, and to play within that. And of course, I wanted to know the author's motivation in what I'm calling as an instrument, because these stories are an instrument to or a platform. So just wanted to know how she, in her research, how does she kind of remain within those quarters, right? Yeah.
Okay, I agree with you. I completely agree with you, because when you write on mythology, it's not an original script. So there is a huge onus of responsibility an author has to have when he's taking characters which are not originally his. So I think that is a huge, sort of a conscious idea at the back of my mind when I have a storyline, but yes, I'm sort of revisiting the entire story through my eyes, through my perspective. And I think that is the charm of mythology. I mean, earlier I gave an example of the fact about Vyas's Shakuntala and Kalidas's Shakuntala. I mean, Kalidas's Shakuntala she's entirely different from what Vyas thought. But he had the creativity, he had the liberty to do that. And I think the Shakuntala which we know of is Kalidas's Shakuntala. We do. How many of us do know of Vyas's Shakuntala? So that shows how mythology and literature are an intricate part, and they are always going to be there. I mean, whether it's mythology or music, mythology, or any art form. So you derive a lot of stories from mythology, and whether he's any artist, I think when he is dealing with any mythological story, has to do it with a certain level of maturity. And let me talk about myself, because since my characters are small characters, because I try to put a spotlight on them, and they sort of give them a voice. And because what I try to do is, when I'm sort of playing with fiction and facts, I try to make the character as believable as she can be. Whether it's in fact, honestly, I found in Sita's sister, creating Urmila was easier than sort of redefining Lakshman, because Lakshman is you see him either as Ram's brother or the dutiful brother-in-law. You never ever see him as a husband, as a friend, as a lover. I mean, his entire sexual identity is completely sublimated. So I had to do that with a lot of delicacy. And I think I seriously believe that, I know that India is a country of so many people. I have no right to hurt their sentiments. I seriously believe in that, because mythology, forget, I mean, it's sacred scriptures are part of it, or whatever. I'm not talking about the religious part of it at all. What I'm trying to say, even as when I am sort of, I do not want to corrupt the original. That is what I want to say. I do not want to distort it. I do not want to corrupt it. I'm just trying to show what it could have been. I think there the fiction part comes, and I try to make her there is a certain logic behind why I made her a big character. From a minor to I made her into a protagonist. And whether it's a main core, whether it's a Surpanaka. In Surpanaka, I was not trying to say that from a sinner I made her a saint. No, not at all. If you read Lanka's Princess, I am not justifying her at all. It is about, I'm just trying to know her story. So
right.
Let me answer for myself. So I think I try to do that.
Yeah. So Kavita, I mean, there is definitely a utility in, but what the recent past, if you look at Bahubali or, stories that have got commercial success, at least to the viewer, there is no correlation with any mythological character. So is there
No,
still
but I think if you're talking about Bahubali, honestly, when I saw it, there was nothing wrong with it. I mean, it reminded me of a Chanda Mama story. Have you read Chanda Mama? I mean, these are stories. See, you have a right over mythology. That is what, I mean, if you see literature, vernacular literature, what is it? The backbone of vernacular literature is mythology. It's only because we are now it's coming in the commercial field. That's why I think it's the whole thing, or we are writing in English. The whole thing is it's coming to the urban crowd. But I think it's always been there. So Bahubali, I don't know there was anything wrong with it.
No, there's nothing wrong. So what I'm really trying to bring to the front is there utility in using all these characters, reusing them, or building fiction around them, or completely create new characters? Just like I gave you one example.
But when you okay, give me.
So Bahubali was just an example where it was completely created brand new and sculpted to some extent. So whereas it doesn't have any lineage back to mythology, but still it has found commercial success. So so you seem to, in your writings, want to keep that lineage versus creating completely net new, and that's your distinct style.
So are you asking me should I go the Bahubali way and create my own mythology? Is that what you're asking me?
I'm trying to understand the. So that's where my question was. So is there something in the instrument, or the platform that Indian mythological characters provide? There is some utility that you see in them, some potential which is latent. Compared to
of course, that's what I told you. They've always been there. It's not only literature.
It's always
you
been.
See it in art. It's been there. So now, since we are writing in English, it's like okay, we are saying okay, horror. But you see, it's not only in India. You see all over the world. This whole entire craze for historical fiction. Or if you see something like Game of Thrones, what was it? It was not just an amalgamation of different histories of Europe. It was also an amalgamation of different mythologies of Europe. It had the Norse, it had the Celtic. So I think that is what I think the reader actually wants. Where our mythology is concerned, I definitely think there's a huge vacuum. Because I grew up on Amar Chitrakatha, and I think that person needs to be given a national award for keeping mythology alive for generations together. And Dr. Pai. So that initial interest, I mean, I was reading a Tintin and I was reading Mandrake and Phantom also. So it was a very global thing that, okay, while I was sort of reading an Amma Chitrakatha and I was reading Archie. But the fact is that the interest was developed. I knew who Ram was, who Dashrath was, who Kaikeyi was, which today's generation, I'm quite sure, do not know. And I think this huge vacuum which is being created about the ignorance which is there, and I think that is what all the mythological writers are trying to fill in, because there is a huge scope both ways. I mean, the writer has an entire canvas to write about, because I think mythology, actually, I just want to expand. Mythology is always being adapted, because I think after a point it is not supposed to make you judge, it's supposed to make you think. You don't take a mythology story literally. There are layers of it, and every time you peel that layer, you realize what mythology is about. So same thing about characters. I mean, each character, if you see, you revisit Duryodhan every time, you realize, okay, he has a different perspective each time. So if someone writes about a Duryodhan or a Ravan or a Ram, or even a small character like, let's say, a Vidur, yes, why not?
Right. Yeah. So my last question to Kavita is: does she have plans to, take this to, express this in other forms other than a book, like a movie or something, like virtual, which is like a 3D movie or something?
No. If someone takes their owners, please. I'm not interested in. I'm just happy writing my books. If someone wants to adapt it into a movie, well and good.
Any interest from any quarters that you have received now, or?
Oh yeah, talks are there, but.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sangram. So you all the others who are on the chat, you can, on the Zoom webinar, you can unmute your line and you can ask Kavita a question. So please go ahead. Going once, going twice, going thrice. So, Ms. Kavita, thank you once again for this wonderful session. And I think we learned a lot about not only the craft of writing, but also some of your inspirations and your thoughts.
Hello there again.
And for everyone else, we are going to, this is being recorded. So this will be put up on different channels on social media, Facebook, and so on. And we'll publish those links once they're made available. Thank you all for dialing in, joining in, and have a good rest of your Sunday.
Thank you. Thank you very much for making my Sunday so special.
Thank you, Ms. Kavita, again. Have a good day.
Bye.